So we did Grotesque, and there's about, I think, 5 or 6 instances where it shows itself, and each instance is kind of related, but they're all a little bit different, but they all have the same underlying concept, which is that Nick is saying it, and it's describing objects, or describing people, or describing things. It's not like describing a concept, it's merely describing actual instances in time.
Like concrete things.
Like concrete things. So, we also kind of uncovered that, so if you guys don't know what grotesque means, grotesque can mean a couple things. What we found that used most commonly was to describe something that's distorted or twisted in a way, in like a dark fashion, which is kind of in like a negative usage. But it can also be used where there's one instance where he's describing a rose, which Nick describes a rose as grotesque, as, you know, how a rose is beautiful, but it also has a twisted element or a twisted aspect of it that kind of has a darker side. So Arden and Imani have points to share regarding that.
So when he uses grotesque to describe Gatsby in on chapter 6, he says the most grotesque and fantastic conceits haunted him in his bed at night. The universe, ineffable, godness spun itself out in brain while the clock ticked on the washstand, and the moon soaked with wet light his tangled clothes upon the floor. And when he's talking about this, he's talking about how he's describing Gatsby, and he's kind of talking about how his need for fame and his need for money is kind of grotesque because it's not real. It's ugly. You know, he's doing it for a reason he shouldn't be doing it, and so he describes this as grotesque. He says the most grotesque and fantastic conceits, and conceits is like you're conceited, like you think about yourself, and you know you're worried about yourself, and he's describing his
Aspirations.
His aspirations, his motives as grotesque, because he's going after Daisy, who's not very, who in my opinion is not a very good person, and he's getting money for Daisy, and he's doing bootlegging, which is illegal, and so he's doing all these things, even though it's kind of admirable that he's doing it for. At the same time, he's doing it's for a wrong cause, and so he's describing it as grotesque because it's kind of ugly, it's not good. And
so even though it seems like it's a good, you know, like even it seems like a noble cause, you're trying to get the girl, the process in which he's doing it is grotesque. It's twisted. It's manipulating. It's not the norm. So we have 1 minute left.
You guys are halfway done.
Halfway done.
Okay, then Nick describes Grotesque when he says 100 houses at once, conventional grotesque, crouching under a sullen, overhanging sky and a lustreless moon in the foreground. 4 solemn men in dress suits are walking along the sidewalk with a stretcher on which lies a drunken woman in a white evening dress. So Nick is recounting his view of West Egg during this time, and he thinks of West Egg now as distorted and it's upsetting, and like he doesn't want to be
That's
here.
at the very end of the novel, right?
Yeah,
It's the very last passage.
And he's ready to depart east because he's grossed out and disgusted with West Egg, and he's indicating that he's like finished with West Egg and he just wants to start a new life back in the West and forget about everything that has happened.
yeah, and he's also just trying to give like the reader like an idea of how he feels about West Egg, and like he thinks West Egg is distorted. He thinks West Egg is just a place kind of just chaos. It's not where he wants. It's not a good thing. So he wants the reader to feel like he wants the reader to feel how he's feeling when he's leaving, and which is like that's not a place I want to come back. And he's ready to move on.
And another thing interesting is that usually everything we described, Nick has actually described before, but in a different way. When he first describes West Egg, he doesn't use the word grotesque. He thinks, it's beautiful, there's lots of trees, lots of houses, lots of wealth. But then in contrast, at the end, the houses are all looming down, sinking into the ground. Everything's like his vision is distorted. And so it's usually Nick going back after his first impressions and redescribing what he has seen. Same thing goes for Gatsby's dreams. At first he thinks it's such a noble cause. It's such a...
Then he ends up thinking it's just a bad thing. Once he sees the truth in things,
It's rotten.
It's rotten.
Spoiled.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys.